The scream cracked midnight clean open, and glass hummed like a prayer that forgot the words. Amara said, "Do not touch what you will not keep," while her hands shook in the dark foyer. Malik said, "I came to tell the truth," and the rain hammered the capital like drums. Tasha said, "Answer the door, or answer to yourself," and thunder rolled like a dare. Amara said, "You ruined the quiet I earned," as her breath picked fights with silence. Malik said, "I will be gentle and go slow," and the promise felt heavier than the storm. The corridor smelled of wet wool and old cedar, and memories stalked the walls. Amara said, "Gentle is a word men spend like counterfeit," and her chin lifted. Malik said, "I deserve your fury, not your fear," and his voice came low. Tasha said, "Choose your spine over your story," from the phone lighting the floor. Amara said, "If everything changes tonight, let it change the truth first," and she unlocked the chain. The door opened just enough to let the truth slip, and pride tried to jam the hinge. Amara said, "Say what you came to say," and her voice wore armor that did not fit. Malik said, "There is a record of what I signed," and he held the folio like a wound. The hallway smelled like rain-sick lilies and the old rug that never dried. Amara said, "Records are clever graveyards," and the words walked past him into memory. Tasha said, "Put him on speaker, or put him out," and a buzz of messages gnawed at the table. Malik said, "I chose you before the office chose me," and the porch drip counted the seconds. Amara said, "You chose silence," and the floor creaked like a witness. Lightning paled the walls, showing dust halos around every frame. Malik said, "I feared making you a headline," and his breath folded. Amara said, "You feared seeing yourself clearly," and the chain dangled like a question mark between them. The storm thinned to a hush, and every breath sounded like a pact breaking. Amara said, "You left me with echoes," and her eyes pressed against his edges. Malik said, "I left to shield your name," and the word shield felt like a wall. Tasha said, "A wall is still a leaving," and the phone screen dimmed to a bruise of light. Amara said, "You taught me how to hold my own hand," and the jealousy tasted metallic. Malik said, "Let me earn the right to be here," and the folio sagged under regret. The house had a way of amplifying fear and muffling tenderness. Amara said, "Tenderness without courage is a rumor," and she let the door open wider. Malik said truth then, and his shoulders squared as if before a vote. Tasha said, "I am on the line when you forget your lines," and a laugh almost survived. He set the folio on the console where keys once slept beside promises. Malik said, "This is the agreement I refused to sign," and his fingers trembled like a soundless alarm. Amara said, "Refused or delayed," and she watched his mouth for courage. He opened to a page that smelled of toner and rain, a seal heavy as guilt. Malik said, "They wanted you erased from the narrative," and the air dropped a degree. Amara said, "They wanted me quiet," and quiet bucked like a wild thing. Tasha said, "Names are not favors to be granted," and the phone speaker hummed. Malik said, "I will not make you a secret," and the vow sat between them like a lamp. Amara said, "You already did," and the lamp flickered. Malik said, "Then let me turn it on," and he reached for the switch he should have known. Somewhere outside, sirens braided with thunder, and the city remembered its pulse. Amara said, "If I forgive, I do not forget," and truth warmed her throat like tea. Malik said, "I will earn each breath beside you," and the oath wore no ribbon. Tasha said, "Boundaries are love-wearing boots," and the line steadied Amara's spine. Malik said, "I will start by listening," and silence tried on a gentler shape. Amara said, "Then listen to the part of me that does not trust you yet," and her hands lowered. He nodded like a door that creaks but still holds. Amara said, "We move slow, if we move at all," and the rain finally let go. Malik said, "Slow is a promise I can keep," and the chain swayed once, then still. The night closed its fist around the house, but a small light stayed on and refused to blink. Morning crawled in through thin curtains, and the house smelled like wet cedar and coffee. Amara said, "I learned to stitch myself shut," and she set 2 mugs down. Malik said, "Show me the seams," and his voice lowered like a prayer. Tasha said, "He does not get the whole map," from the phone cradled in a bowl. Amara said, "My mother left with winter in her shoes, and the truth scraped." Malik said, "Then you grew your own spring," and he tried a small smile that failed. The city hummed like a throat clearing, patient and nosy. Amara said, "Spring needs rain and light and time," and her hands wrapped the mug. Malik said, "I can be the time," and silence tipped its hat. Tasha said, "Time is earned, not promised," and the line clicked softer. Amara said, "I will not be a footnote again," and the steam rose like resolve. The apartment walls kept old secrets, the kind that hide in chipped paint and corners. Amara said, "I was the kid who translated bills, and the words tasted like pennies." Malik said, "Responsibility made you steal," and his eyes searched her face. Tasha said, "Steel still bends," and a spoon clinked like punctuation. Amara said, "I wanted love that did not use me as scaffolding," and her shoulders eased a notch. Malik said, "I wanted power that did not erase my name," and he looked at the folio. The day thinned into a pale ribbon across the counter. Amara said, "Names can be shelters or traps," and she traced a ring on the table. Malik said, "Let me be a shelter," and the air held steady. Tasha said, "He can pass the test by staying," and the kettle sang. They walked the block to make peace with motion, feet speaking before mouths did. Amara said, "Every corner in this city knows my almosts," and she watched the slick pavement. Malik said, "I built a future that forgot its source," and his steps slowed. Tasha said, "Walk like you mean it," in a voice note that bounced. Amara said, "I wanted college without debt chasing me home," and a bus sighed past. Malik said, "I wanted office without chains dressed as favors," and his hands found his pockets. The sky wore a clean blue that pretended last night was fiction. Amara said, "Pretend never saved me," and her chin rose. Malik said, "Then I will stop pretending," and traffic murmured approval. Tasha said, "Accountability is the only bouquet," and the message ended. Amara said, "Start with listening to the parts you do not like," and he nodded. They paused at a mural where 1,000 names bloomed like soft thunder. Amara said, "I used to stand here and practice being unafraid," and her breath slowed. Malik said, "Fear kept me careful and cruel," and the confession stung. Tasha said, "Careful without courage is camouflage," and the wind lifted the edge of her words. Amara said, "My dream is simple and costly," and she eyed the bright paint. Malik said, "Say it, and I will measure myself by it," and his shoulders squared. Amara said, "Love that does not hide me, work that does not break me," and the street went quiet. Malik said, "I can help, but I cannot define you," and the truth tasted clean. Tasha said finally, a sentence with spine, and a laugh escaped. Amara said, "I will not shrink to fit your legend," and he bowed to it. Back home, the light found the dust and made a galaxy out of ordinary air. Amara said, "Here is what I need from you," and she laid the words like cards. Malik said, "Name them, and I will meet them or move," and his tone held. Tasha said, "This is the contract that matters," and a notification winked away. Amara said, "No secrets, no vanishing, no press before my yes," and the room steadied. Malik said, "No pressure, no bargaining with your quiet," and he breathed deeper. Amara said, "And slow is not code for doubt," and she touched the chain. Malik said, "Slow is a devotion," and the sentence wore plain clothes. Tasha said, "Document the promise in behavior," and silence agreed. Amara said, "Then we begin with breakfast and space," and she smiled small. Malik said, "I can learn the rhythm that keeps you whole," and the day opened. The lobby of the art center hummed like a hive dressed in velvet programs. Amara said, "We agreed on slow," and her pulse tapped a restless code. Malik said, "Slow is here with flowers and restraint," and he lifted a wristband. Ushers drifted like soft warnings, while a jazz trio warmed the air. Amara said, "Public places make brave men gentle," and her mouth tried a smile. Malik said, "I am brave where no one claps," and his gaze held steady. The elevator chimed and delivered a rumor in heels and perfume. Daria Cole said, "Mr. President, your car is ready," and the room tilted. Amara said, "Your world still speaks for you," and the syllables bruised sweet. Malik said, "My world will learn your name," and the promise stood unblinking. Daria Cole said, "Schedules are people with sharp edges," and her eyes measured everything. They slipped to the terrace where the city stacked its lights like prayers. Amara said, "Your handler calls you like a bell," and the night pressed cool fingers. Malik said, "She keeps storms off my calendar," and his tone held apology. Tasha said, "Storms teach you how to drive," from a buzz that lit her screen. Amara said, "I need to matter when no one is watching," and she leaned on the rail. Malik said, "You matter when my phone is off," and he powered it down. Daria Cole said, "The press loves a silhouette from the doorway with a glance." Amara said, "Let them love the truth instead," and the city wind nodded. Malik said, "Then stand with me in daylight," and his hand hovered near hers. Amara said, "Earn daylight, and the night will not scare me," and the music rose. Back inside, whispers moved faster than people, stitching headlines from air. Daria Cole said, "Optics require exits before entrances," and she cut a smile. Malik said, "Optics will follow integrity, not lead it," and the words stood tall. Amara said, "Integrity is hungry work," and she felt the room watch her breathe. Tasha said, "Smile like you own your oxygen," and the text brightened her pocket. Daria Cole said, "Security prefers predictable hearts," and her clipboard hovered. Malik said, "Her heart will be unpredictable and protected," and he faced the hall. Amara said, "Protection without respect is custody," and the carpet softened underfoot. Daria Cole said, "I will schedule respect at 9, and the joke grazed like glass. Malik said, "Respect is now," and he offered Amara his arm. She took the space beside him and not the arm, and the moment learned a shape. The quartet hit a minor key that felt like truth signing its name. Amara said, "Desire is not a permission slip," and her breath steadied. Malik said, "Desire is the doorbell, not the key," and his smile held heat and care. Daria Cole said, "We are due downstairs," and the clock on the wall agreed. Amara said, "Go do what the seal requires," and she folded her arms gently. Malik said, "I will return as a man, not a headline," and he shifted his stance. Tasha said, "Boundaries are beautiful when they breathe," and the phone went quiet. Amara said, "I can want you and still want myself more," and the sentence rooted. Malik said, "Hold both, and I will meet you there," and the bass walked on. Daria Cole said, "Car is waiting," and the aisle cleared like a throat. Outside by the curb, the motorcade breathed like a patient beast. Tasha said, "If he returns, measure him by verbs," and the words landed true. Amara said, "I am tired of nouns that glitter," and the night felt lighter. Daria Cole said, "He has a meeting with men who count maps," and she watched the street. Amara said, "Maps are stories that forgot the people," and her palms warm. Malik said, "People are why I ran, and you are why I stop," and he met her eyes. Tasha said, "Leave room for the part of you that doubts," and a siren faded. Amara said, "Doubt is my lookout, not my driver," and she stepped back. Malik said, "I will send an itinerary," and arrive with silence, and the door opened. Daria Cole said, "Clock is moving," and the convoy purred. Amara waved once, not goodbye, but a promise to watch. The silence in Amara's apartment pressed against the walls like a secret waiting to speak. Amara said something in his eyes carried weight he didn't drop, and her reflection in the glass nodded back. Tasha said, secrets never stay folded, and the words lingered like smoke. Amara said if he carries another truth it will split the floor, and she pulled the curtains tighter. Malik said, I left something unsaid last night, in a message that blinked unread on her phone. Amara said, unread keeps me safer than undone, and she let the screen fade. Tasha said, fear is louder when you hide from it, and the kettle whistled sharp. Amara said, he swore daylight, but shadows followed him, and she breathed slow. Outside, thunder rumbled without rain, a storm rehearsing its entrance. Amara said, truth will break in, even if I bolt the door, and her shoulders sank. The knock arrived like a confession without words, steady and unwilling to leave. Amara said, storms never wait for permission, and her hand hovered over the latch. Malik said, let me in before rumor does from the other side, his voice frayed. Tasha said, you wanted the daylight, open the door or watch him fade, and the advice cut sharp. Amara said, daylight shows cracks too, and her palm pressed flat against the wood. Malik said, I owe you the full ledger, not the edited pages, and footsteps shifted. The air smelled of ozone, of rain still deciding. Amara said, truth has interest when it's late, and she unhooked the chain with a sigh. Malik stepped into the light of her lamp, shadow trailing behind like a witness. Amara said, speak before silence betrays you, and her eyes narrowed. The folio returned, worn edges curling like guilt. Malik said, the contract was only part. There's a clause they buried, and his voice broke a little. Amara said, buried things grow teeth, and her eyes locked on the seal. Tasha said, read it aloud, don't let his tone soften the cut, and the phone buzzed steady. Malik said, it was drafted to erase not just you, but your family name, and the words bled into the room. Amara said, they want my history silent, and her jaw set. Malik said, I signed nothing, but they own the threat, and his hand trembled. The lamplight flickered as if it too recoiled. Amara said, silence is a chain I refuse to inherit, and her voice steadied. Tasha said, chains rust when named, and the line hummed alive. Amara said, then speak every hidden clause, and her breath demanded. Malik's voice lowered to a register that carried both shame and defiance. Malik said, I kept this from you, because I feared losing you sooner, and his shoulders bent. Amara said, you lost me in the silence, not the storm, and her chest tightened. Tasha said, fear is not loyalty, it's control, and the truth cracked through. Malik said, they promised my career but demanded your erasure, and the words tasted bitter. Amara said, my name is not a bargaining chip, and the walls echoed it back. Malik said, I chose delay, but delay is betrayal, and his eyes closed hard. The clock ticked louder than breath. Amara said, every tick is trust bleeding out, and her fists curled. Tasha said, decide if this is salvage or ruins, and silence followed. Amara said, tell me if I was ever more than a secret, and her voice cut clear. The storm finally broke, rain smearing the glass until the city blurred like tears. Amara said, every lie you buried still clawed its way here, and her voice fractured. Malik said, I want you to know me whole, even if it breaks us, and his breath shook. Tasha said, whole is better than polished, and the words struck true. Amara said, then show me every shadow you carried, and she lifted the folio higher. Malik said, the shadow is my father's silence, my mother's ambition, my own cowardice, and he faced her fully. The lamp hummed, fragile and stubborn. Amara said, you wear their ghosts, but I won't live under them, and her tone burned. Malik said, then burn me clean, and the plea filled the room. The storm roared approval, lightning etched the moment into memory. Amara said, this is the twist, where love either rots or roots, and her eyes refused to close. The rain pounded harder, drumming against the windows like fists demanding answers. Amara said, You bring me storms instead of safety. And her hands shook with fury. Malik said, I bring you storms because I cannot lie in calm, and his chest heaved. Tasha said, Love isn't thunder, it's shelter, and her voice cut from the phone. Amara said shelter never hid in your arms, and her throat burned. Malik said my arms failed when fear spoke louder than love, and his voice cracked. The air shimmered like glass on the edge of shattering. Amara said, You called me strength, but you wrote me weak in secret, and her jaw locked. Malik said I wanted to protect you, but I only imprisoned you, and his fists opened slowly. Tasha said, Protection without trust is violence dressed pretty, and silence fell. Amara said, This is the beginning of the end or the start of war, and her eyes blazed. The air between them snapped tight, charged with grief and want. Amara said, You say protect, but I hear erase, and her voice cut like glass. Malik said I erased the silence in me. Not you, and his words fell heavy. Tasha said, Stop trading riddles, speak bone deep, and the phone hummed with urgency. Amara said, Bone deep means, I am not negotiable. And her breath came hard. Malik said, Bone deep means I choose you over legacy, and his eyes flared. The lamp swayed in the wind that sneaked through the cracked window. Amara said, Your legacy already kissed my shadow, and her shoulders stiffened. Malik said, Then let me bury that kiss with fire, and his tone seared. Tasha said, Fire consumes or cleanses, and her voice lowered. Amara said, Then let's see which burns first, your truth or my trust, and she didn't blink. Their voices rose until the storm itself leaned in to listen. Amara said, Every lie left fingerprints on my skin, and she pressed her palm to her chest. Malik said, I never meant to scar, only to shield, and his eyes blurred. Tasha said, Intentions don't clean wounds, and her tone cut sharp. Amara said, My wounds learned your shape, and her words trembled, but did not falter. Malik said, Then let me be the hand that heals what I broke, and he stepped closer. The air pulsed with both rage and yearning. Amara said, Healing is not your gift to give, and her voice cracked. Malik said, Then it is my penance, and his chest leaned forward like an oath. Tasha said, Penance only matters if she accepts, and the line went quiet. Amara said, I am not sure yet if I want your penance or your absence, and her eyes glistened. The door rattled as if the night wanted entry, carrying a darker ghost. Daria Cole said, The press has the documents, and her voice sliced through the storm. Malik said, You leaked it, and his face tightened. Daria Cole said, I saved you from chains you forged yourself, and her tone was steel. Amara said, So betrayal wears heels tonight, and her voice iced over. Malik said, You were supposed to protect us, and his fists shook. Daria Cole said, I protect power, not illusions, and she dropped her gaze on Amara. Tasha said, The shadow always had a name, and her voice trembled. Amara said, Now the world knows mine, not through love but scandal, and her chest ached. Malik said, Then I stand with you in scandal, and his voice burned. Daria Cole said, Stand all you want, the headlines will still bleed, and thunder sealed her point. The storm reached its crescendo, lightning exploding like truth too loud to hide. Amara said, This is where love either roars or rots, and her voice shook the air. Malik said, Then let it roar through me, and he stepped closer, fire in his eyes. Daria Cole said, Love won't pay the cost of power, and her lips curled. Amara said, Power without love is rubble, and her fists opened. Malik said, Choose me in front of the ruin, and he spread his hands wide. Tasha said, Choose spine over spectacle, and the phone crackled low. Amara said, I choose truth, even if it ruins both of us, and her breath steadied. Malik said, Then ruin me with honesty, not silence, and his voice broke. Lightning flooded the room, freezing their faces mid-battle. Amara said, Climax is not fireworks, it's fire, and the words burned permanent. Morning found the city rinsed clean, though the headlines still dripped. Amara said, "If peace comes, it must walk, not sprint," and she opened the blinds. Malik said, "I asked the press for space, and the request sounded thin." Tasha said, "Space is a room you furnish daily," and her message steadied. Amara said, "I will not be managed," and she set the kettle as if setting terms. Malik said, "I will not manage you, only meet you," and his breath evened. The apartment held the smell of wet concrete and citrus, honest and small. Amara said, "We start with boundaries written like vows," and she lifted a pen. Malik said, "I will sign what I should have known to promise," and his voice cleared. Tasha said, "Make the vow visible in action," and a chirp confirmed the send. Amara said, "Then today we practice quiet, truth, and separate keys," and the page waited. They took different trains to the same truth, letting distance teach. Amara said, "I have class and a shift, and the day stacked like books." Malik said, "I have hearings and a mirror," and he thumbed the itinerary. Tasha said, "Accountability is public and private," and her tone was kind. Amara said, "If cameras ask, my answer is dignity," and her steps found rhythm. Malik said, "My answer is responsibility," and he tucked his phone away. The platform smelled of steel and brake dust, a prayer in practical clothes. Amara said, "If you falter, say it before I read it," and she met his eyes. Malik said, "If I falter, I tell you first," and the promise landed. Tasha said, "Promises are jobs with long hours," and the train arrived. Amara said, "I am clocking in for myself," and the doors slid open. By noon, Malik faced a room that smelled like ink, law, and theater. Daria Cole said, "The board wants contrition on camera," and her pen hovered. Malik said, "They will get confession off camera and policy on," and he stood taller. Amara said, "Speak to the harm, not the optics," in a text that hummed. Daria Cole said, "Optics pay the mortgage," and she didn't blink. Malik said, "Truth pays the debt," and the phrase found its weight. The microphones waited like small hungry moons. Amara said, "Own what you hid and name who you harmed," and her message pulsed once. Malik said, "I did harm by hiding," and his throat worked. Daria Cole said, "Then say it clean," and she slid the statement back. Malik said, "And say her name with respect," and the room cooled. Amara sat in a campus lounge where sunlight braided through ficus leaves. Tasha said, "He is Liv," and a link bloomed on her screen. Malik said, "I failed her by asking the world to forget her," and the room hushed. Amara said, "Say what you'll do different," under her breath, tasting iron. Malik said, "I will not trade a woman's dignity for a man's ambition again," and the air steadied. Tasha said, "That sentence will cost him and pay you," and pride warmed. Amara said, "Cost him, not crown him," and she sipped slow. A classmate glanced over, curiosity wrapped in kindness. Malik said, "Her name is Amara, and I respect her choice either way," and the line landed. Tasha said, "Choice is the altar," and the live feed scrolled. Amara said, "Today I choose breath that does not apologize," and the cup set down clean. Evening returned without thunder, and the air learned softness again. Amara said, "Come by, but leave the motorcade at the curb," and the text was clear. Malik said, "I will arrive as a man who knows his shadow," and footsteps neared. Tasha said, "If you let him in, let him work," and the message winked. Amara said, "Work begins with listening and dishwashing," and she opened the door. Malik said, "I can wash and learn," and he rolled up sleeves like receipts. The sink filled with small clinks that sounded like mending. Amara said, "If we build with light and ledger," and she handed a towel. Malik said, "Ledger shows up tomorrow too," and he nodded. Tasha said, "Love is a schedule, not a spectacle," and silence agreed. Amara said, "Then stay for tea, and leave with tasks, and the night held. Night settled like velvet over the city, quiet but still humming with memory. Amara said, "Endings never announce themselves, they just arrive," and her eyes lingered on the chain. Malik said, "I came without entourage, without shield, and his hands were bare." Tasha said, "Bare is where truth begins," and her message blinked steady. Amara said, "Truth feels heavier than love sometimes," and the words hovered. Malik said, "Then let love carry truth instead of hiding it," and his chest rose slow. The lamp threw their shadows tall against the wall, ghosts learning to stretch. Amara said, "We are two people, not legends," and she folded her arms soft. Malik said, "Then let me love you as people love, flawed but faithful," and his voice trembled. Tasha said, "Faithful is daily, not poetic," and silence answered. Amara said, "Tonight we test if daily can begin," and the clock clicked on. The kitchen smelled of mint tea and soap, small comforts in storm's wake. Amara said, "Forgiveness is not instant," and her hand steadied the kettle. Malik said, "Nor should it be, it is soil, not lightning," and he leaned quiet. Tasha said, "Soil grows if watered, not if wished," and the words hummed. Amara said, "I will water boundaries first," and her eyes did not waver. Malik said, "Then I will not cross lines I do not earn," and he exhaled. The steam curled upward like a prayer unfinished. Amara said, "Tea is a test. If you can sit in silence, you pass," and she poured. Malik said, "I will drink in silence," and he cradled the mug. Tasha said, "Silence is music when trusted," and the line stilled. Amara said, "Then let us sip and see," and the tea's warmth spread. Later, they stood by the window, watching the city stitch itself in lights. Amara said, "The world will still talk," and her reflection folded into his. Malik said, "Let them. My words belong to you first," and his jaw firmed. Tasha said, "Talk fades when action stays," and the phone rested quiet. Amara said, "Action means you show up when cameras are gone," and her breath fogged glass. Malik said, "Action means dishes, laughter, tears, and long walks," and his smile was faint but real. The skyline blinked like a restless heart. Amara said, "If I give you another chance, it will not be blind," and her shoulders squared. Malik said, "Do not give blind, give sharp and clear," and his tone softened. Tasha said, "Clarity is love's spine," and her silence after was approval. Amara said, "Then stand with me here clear," and their reflections aligned. The air between them shifted, heavy yet alive, carrying both scars and hope. Amara said, "We cannot erase what broke, only choose how to carry it," and her tone softened. Malik said, "Then let me carry half," and his hand hovered near hers. Tasha said, "Shared weight is lighter, but only if lifted daily," and her voice echoed faint. Amara said, "Daily means showing up when it's inconvenient," and she stepped closer. Malik said, "I will show up tired, flawed, and present," and his voice held. The hum of the fridge filled the silence like steady breath. Amara said, "Presence is the proof," and she let her hand touch his. Malik said, "Then let this be proof one," and he closed the space. Tasha said, "Proof is not promise, but it is start," and the line dimmed. Amara said, "Start is enough tonight," and her smile flickered. The night stretched thin, but its silence felt like shelter now. Amara said, "Love is not spectacle. It's work and choice," and her eyes gleamed steady. Malik said, "Then I choose you again, in work and in quiet," and his words landed clean. Tasha said, "Quiet is the final test," and her message blinked once before fading. Amara said, "If tomorrow breaks us, tonight I still claim my dignity," and her chin lifted. Malik said, "If tomorrow breaks us, I still carry your name with respect," and his voice lowered. The city lights dimmed as if bowing. Amara said, "Respect is the root, not the flower," and her breath steadied. Malik said, "Then let me water the root," and his hands opened wide. Tasha said, "Roots outlive storms," and silence hummed. Amara said, "Final word, slow, gentle, honest, and the night sealed it like scripture.